Want to talk some Ilya Sorokin now?
Yeah, because Stefan brought up a good point. Talking about Ilya Sorokin's offseason, really, and just that he didn't have a normal offseason last year, right? He's absolutely right in talking about that, and good on him for bringing it up. Because Ilya Sorokin didn't have a fantastic year. We all know that. You just look at the stats. They're not great. The underlying numbers are good, and anyone within the NHL still recognizes that Ilya Sorokin did a fantastic job for the New York Islanders, whether the overlying numbers agree with that or not. But he didn't have that regular offseason where you can train properly. He was focused on recovering and rehabbing from that random back injury that we just kind of randomly found out about someday on a golf course.
I was going to say, it was around this time a year ago, right, where Patrick Waugh just randomly dropped that, oh, yeah, by the way, Ilya Sorokin had back surgery this offseason.
Yeah, right, because we got something out of Elliot Friedman maybe a week or two prior to that, going like, I hear something going on with Ilya Sorokin. He might not be 100%. And we're like, whatever. And then Patty drops the bomb at the golf thing. God damn, it's a back injury. Oh my God. And then he had to come back and be like, he had the surgery. He'll be fine to start the season. And sure enough, he wasn't necessarily 100% fine. And you kind of saw it through the year because it felt like he was catching up to that moving train of the Islanders season. Whereas now he doesn't, knock on wood, he doesn't have to do that. No. Right? Where he's going to be able to focus on readying his body for the season and just hit the ground running.
No, exactly. And that's kind of you hope that's the version that you're gonna be getting from Ilya Sorokin, who, didn't have the best start to the season.
No.
Was better as the year went on, though. His last 30 games had a .914 save percentage. Like, that's a little bit closer to normal. But there were a few clunkers mixed in there, which obviously impacted the numbers, but was pulling up the stats while you were talking. Was still in a way surprised to see he finished 6th in Vezina voting. So like, bad year Ilya Sorokin, still a top 6 goalie in terms of league voting at least.
Right. And so does that kind of, how should I say this? The way I think about what you just said with those numbers being like 9-14 through the second half of the season tells me that for players of lesser quality, catching up to the moving train is harder. But a player of good quality could eventually catch up to the moving train given enough runway. And it seemed like Ilya was catching up to that moving train, just didn't have enough runway, right? As you're saying, 9-14 through the second half of the year. 9-14 is decent. It's not lock for Vezina, but that is going to win you a lot of games. Does it not feel like he may have been catching up to that moving train? And now that he doesn't have to worry about rehabbing and then catching up through the first half of the season, that we can have at least a 9-14 goalie going into the year?
Yeah, that'd be really nice, right? Like, first 30 games, 898, back 30 games, essentially a 9-14. So you split the difference. That's how you end up at the 907, save percentage there. But you're kind of hoping that carries over. And I obviously hope he's better than a 9-14. I'd like to see 920 plus from Sorokin, and we've seen him do it before. He's absolutely capable of it. But, Stefan also, I believe it must have been, he's the only one pumping out content as much as we are over here in Islanders land, was saying, like, if the Islanders want to be a playoff team this year, it's going to really fall on Sorokin. Like, he's going to have to kind of play out of his mind to drag this team to a playoff spot.
Yeah.
And that's not my expectation, by the way. And nor do I think it was Stefan's expectation for this team to be a playoff team. Like, I think he's just saying, like, if there was a path for this team to be a playoff team, I think it would have to be Sorokin being I'll call it top 3 Vezina finalist.
Yeah. The only reason I'm humming and hawing is like, no, not even. Barzal would have to be out of his mind. If he turns into a 100-point player, then maybe we've got a shot, even with Sorokin being okay, right? Because he was okay this year, or last year, sorry, right? 9-14 in the back half, and we still almost made it. Of course, we got support because the East was shit, specifically the Metropolitan Division.
Correct.
Maybe that happens again. It's likely that happens again this year, that the Metro is weak once again. And maybe Sorokin just needs to be a 9 14th through the season, but Barzal's got to be that 100-point player. So there's a possibility here where Sorokin can be okay, but Barzal's got to then pick up the slack because we're going to need goals and he's got to create them.
Yeah, you also probably need more than 30 games of Matthew Barzal.
Yeah, minimum. That's wild when you think about it, that we still almost made the playoffs last year with Sorokin needing half of the year to catch up and Matthew Barzal only playing 30 games.
And Anthony Duclair, who was signed to be a top 6 guy, injured for a large chunk of it too.
Right? So, like, sure, this year we don't have Noah Dobson, but we should theoretically have Matthew Schaefer to kind of pick up some of that slack. And then we should, fingers crossed, have a healthy Matthew Barzal and Duke. That should help too.
Yeah, it should help too. Again, that my expectation is not for this team to be a playoff team. No. I don't want that to be misconstrued. But having those two guys back, starting the show with Duclair, talking about Barzal, talking about a healthy Ilya Sorokin, like I do think that makes a difference for how the team looks night in and night out. I just don't think there'll be as many peaks and valleys of what there were last year. I think they'll kind of just be consistently hovering around 500 for essentially the whole year. I don't know if they'll be like, oh, they're the number 1 wild card, and then they drop to like the second worst team in the East, and then they're right back in the mix. I think they'll kind of just be like okay out of the gate to the end.
Yeah, they'll be like, they go on a 5-game run, they go on a 6-game dip, but like even when it comes to the standings itself, right. I'm with you. I don't think there's too much volatility there. Yeah, I agree with that. Like this team we should know what it is by American Thanksgiving, and then from there they'll just kind of coast around that line through the rest of the season, I would imagine.
That's usually the test, right? The age-old test. If you're in a playoff spot by Thanksgiving, usually you're good at that point.
75% chance that you make the playoffs by the end of it. So we'll see. Who knows? Great point by Stefan. If they want to get in the playoffs, which they obviously do, Sorokin's going to have to be massive. Barzal's going to have to be massive. And who knows how good this Shabanov kid is? Maybe he's absolutely dynamite.
It would be nice. It would be nice to just randomly hit on one of those guys and they're just like sick right away.